So you are saying that, like the guided democracy that the military wanted to give us, the National Assembly is now trying to guide the political parties.
Because the political parties have not been doing what is right. But those who are in the National Assembly are members of the political parties, and they understand what they do out there in the field. They understand that sometimes when you have direct primaries, it is undermined. You have indirect primaries, is undermined. Sometimes those who did not even contest party primaries, their names are sent to the Electoral Management Body as the candidate of the political parties. So the National Assembly has tried to guide the political parties to do what is right. But we are not yet there.
Don't you think, Mr. Okoye, that very fact that the National Assembly is guiding, teleguiding, micromanaging political parties is weakening the capacity in the long run, it removing the capacity of the parties to develop themselves, to self-destruct and to build themselves? Because if they had the option to self-destruct, the options to build themselves, they may have crossed this line.
I really don't think so. I believe that what the National Assembly has done is the right thing is the right thing, and is the right way to go. If political parties are doing what is not right, if they are doing what is not permissible democratically, if they are doing things that undermines democracy, if they are doing things that says the clock of democracy back, the National Assembly can intervene through its lawmaking powers to bring them back to their senses, to bring them back to democracy. So I think that for me, that's what the National Assembly is doing. To allow political parties to self-destruct will be to allow democracy to die in the country. And I think that no self-respecting country will allow that to happen.
Yeah, but that introduces another problem. In some countries like the UK, for instance, I do know that parties go around shopping for candidates and they bring the candidates to contest election. Now, by writing those rules, the parties are left at the mercy of godfathers, of people who control the parties, and howsoever you look at it, we have arrived at a situation where the parties are weak, the democratic structures are weak, and people are getting discouraged anyhow from the practice.
Let us get it something straight. The courts, especially the Supreme Court, have made it very clear that political parties are independent entities and must be allowed to run their affairs. That nobody has the right to dictate to a political party the way it should conduct its affairs and who should be its candidate in any election. But that if the political party has set down guidelines and rules on how it will conduct its primaries, that it must conduct its primaries the way he has said it will conduct its primaries. If he fails to do that, then the courts will intervene. But that ultimately, political parties are at liberty to run their affairs.
But Barrister Okoye, they cannot be at independence to run. They cannot be said to be independently running their affairs when the National Assembly writes their rules for them, how they should conduct their affairs for them.
They have not shown capacity to do what is right. They have not shown that capacity to really tell Nigerians that they believe in democracy, democratic practices, and democratic values. And that's why the National Assembly has to step in. If a political party, for instance, decides
another one will come in its place.
No, it doesn't work that way. What works that way is that the moment political parties continue to do what is not right, the people disengage from them, and the people will disengage from democracy and blame democracy for what is going on in the political parties, and democracy will begin to face reversal. And when the moment democracy begins to face reversal, nobody will remain there to fight for democracy anytime democracy faces danger. So the political parties can engage in impunity and get away with it without somebody calling them to order. But ultimately, it is democracy that is losing. It is democracy that is being given bad name. And I want a situation in this country where, at the end of the day, when democracy is in danger, when democracy is facing reversal, there will still be Nigerians who will remain and say, no, we believe in this system. The problem is not the system, but the operators of the system. So they'll be ready to fight for democracy. But if we have a situation where people have completely disengaged and democracy faces danger, nobody comes in defense of democracy, that means we are really, really in trouble.
Well, the other side of the argument is that in the place of parties, if parties don't follow their rules, they create problems for themselves. New parties will emerge from there, and so the system will self-correct itself. Rather than someone writing laws for political parties have today the rules for how they should conduct themselves are uniformly written by the National Assembly. How does that build the political parties?
These things have a history. They have a history. You say, okay, for instance, you want to conduct direct primaries. And then, rather than you want to conduct direct primaries for a particular constituency. And then you carry the primaries for that particular constituency, and you go to another state to go and do the primaries for a different state. In such a situation, the National Assembly can intervene. I know there was a particular time in a particular senatorial district where the number of people that allegedly voted in a senatorial primary were more than the total number of registered voters in that particular senatorial district.
No, it has happened in many.
How can you explain that?
In the last round of elections, there were many more. There were some states that conducted what they call direct primaries, and the people who voted there were more than. But let's move on to the issue of the reforms. People are talking about if we had all the elections in one day, perhaps there will be less manipulation, and you don't seem to agree with that.
I don't agree on basically 4 grounds. The first ground is that it has become next to impossibility for us to have all elections in one day because the courts have already staggered our elections. The governorship elections in Edo State, in Ondo State, in Bayelsa, in Imo, and in Anambra have been staggered. In November, we are going to have governorship election in Anambra. So what we are saying is that when you amend the constitution and stagger it, the democratically elected governor of Anambra, who has been elected for a period of 4 years, will now serve for a period of 1 year or 2 years. That is not democracy. And that we know, and there's no constitutional backing for that. That is one. Secondly, if you look at Section 132 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Section 132 of the Constitution is very clear. It says, for instance, that an election to the office of the president shall be held on a date to be appointed by the Independent National Electoral Commission. The word there is mandatory, that it is the Independent National Electoral Commission that should appoint that date. Secondly, if you also look at Section 132, subsection 2, it says that an election to the said office shall be held on a date not earlier than 150 days and not later than 30 days before the expiration of the term of office of the last holder of that particular office. The implication is that the lawmakers have given an independent agency the exclusive right to fix the time and date of elections. Now, if you are not saying you want to hold all elections in one day, you have to look at Section 135, subsection 2, and decide its implications on our democracy. Section 135, subsection 2 says that subject to the provisions of subsection 1, the president shall vacate his office. The operative word there is vacate. Vacate his office at the expiration of a period of 4 years. What that means is that you don't need somebody to write a letter to the president saying, leave, your term of office has expired. You don't need that. Now, if there is breakdown of law and order, for instance, in the country, if there's breakdown of law and order, and we are unable to hold the election, what happens? Now, if you look at Section 135, subsection 3 of the Constitution, it says that if the federation is at war, the operative word there is war, in which a territory of Nigeria is physically involved, and the president considers that it is not practicable to hold elections, the National Assembly may, by resolution, extend the period of 4 years mentioned in subsection 2 of this section from time to time, but no such extension shall exceed a period of 6 months at any given time. Only war in which Nigeria is involved. It did not say that if there is generalized lawlessness and the electoral management body is unable to conduct elections, that the National Assembly can extend this period by an additional period of 6 months. He didn't say that. So my question is, you want to conduct all elections in 1 day. You are putting the president in jeopardy, governors, members of the National Assembly, and members of the State Assembly, and we are unable to conduct this election because something tragic has happened in the country. Under what constitutional provision will the president remain in office when the law says that the president and the governors shall vacate, they should move? So if something happens, what do we do? But if we have a situation where you conduct presidential and National Assembly elections in 1 day, and governorship and State Assembly elections in 1 day, and then you want to conduct presidential and National Assembly elections, and something happens, at least there will be some democratic structures on ground. There will be some democratic structures on ground that can take care of the emergency situation that will arise. If you don't have these democratic structures on ground, what that means is that a president will have to declare a state of emergency. But if he declares that state of emergency and his tenure of office has elapsed, we will slip into a constitutional crisis and we can't recover. Yeah, so that is the constitutional aspect of it.
But the issue they are talking about is not as complicated as you are presenting it. The issue that I understand they are talking about is simply that instead of holding the presidential National Assembly elections 1 week before the governorship and the House of Assembly elections, why don't you just hold them on the same day? The difference between them is 1 week, usually 1 week.
No, sometimes it's 2 weeks. If you hold all of them in 1 day and something goes wrong,
what could possibly go
continue to run?
What could possibly
be generalized lawlessness? There can be breakdown of law and order. You live in this country. You know how elections are in this country. If there's complete breakdown of law and order in the country, and the electoral management body is unable to deploy, because
but the election is 150 days before the time of expiration of the tenure. So there's enough time.
No, you said you cannot hold it before then. You can't hold it before then. And you cannot hold it 30 days before the expiration. So the gap may just be a period of 30 days. It may just be a period of 60 days. And if anything happens, what are you going to do?
Yeah, we have practiced the doctrine of necessity, which can still be called up.
Who will activate that doctrine of necessity? This doctrine of necessity has to be activated by a democratic structure. But all these democratic structures are at play during this particular period. So who will activate that democratic structure? Doctrine of necessity. Yeah. And mind you, the doctrine of necessity is not a constitutional doctrine in terms of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
As we round up, what is the way out?
The way out is to allow the electoral management body to fix the time and the dates and sequence of elections. There's also a court order backing this particular sequence. Secondly, is for the political elite to do what is right. The fear is, if we conduct these elections differentially, there will be manipulation. People will be comfortable, and then they can move to manipulate. Why can't the people stay on their lane?
Yeah,
Why
but
can't people stay on their lane? Why can't people do what is right?
You can actually reverse that one. The other one, the question you ask is that I mean, if the electoral, if people had confidence in the independence and partiality or otherwise of the electoral umpire, all these questions will not arise.
Rima, let me tell you the truth. This issue about having confidence or no confidence in the electoral empire. There are 12 national commissioners and the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. On election day, the chairman and the national commissioners stay in a room at the National Collation Center. They didn't go out to the field. Those who conduct in this country, the over 1.5 million ad hoc staff who serve as presiding officers and assistant presiding officers are Nigerians. No INEC staff serves as a presiding officer or assistant presiding officer in the over 176,000 polling units. Those who are collation officers in the 8,809 registration areas are university lecturers. Those who serve as collation officers at the state level and as returning officers are professors in Nigerian universities.